The BBC has done way more than just Pride and Prejudice. From Brontë to Trollope, they've turned some of the biggest novels into must-see television. These are 20 of the best, starring Hugh Dancy, Benedict Cumberbatch, even a young Daniel Radcliffe in a forgotten Dickens adaptation. Andrew Davies's take on Vanity Fair turns Thackeray's world upside down in the best way possible. Natasha Little takes over the entire miniseries as Becky Sharp, a penniless, sharp-tongued governess working her way up through Regency society, charming or cutting down everyone in her path. Her Becky is sly, charismatic, sometimes venomous, always interesting. The adaptation absolutely nails the book's satirical edge. It moves at a brisk pace, looks beautiful, Brussels on the eve of Waterloo, the London drawing rooms, all of it. The supporting cast brings plenty of comic relief. Miriam Margolyes is a highlight as the sour Miss Crawley. But it's always Natasha Little's show. She walked away with a Best Actress BAFTA. And it's easy to see why. This character is absolutely timeless. Even the critics saw it. LA Times said Becky could have been dropped into modern Los Angeles and held her own. Tucked away in the BBC's catalogue, Precious Bane is a rural Gothic romance set in Shropshire, based on Mary Webb's novel. Janet McTeer stars as Prue Sarn, a young woman marked by a cleft lip, a so-called Precious Bane in a superstitious, sometimes cruel farming community. She's tough, smart, and deeply kind. She lives under the shadow of her ambitious brother Gideon, a very young Clive Owen already making a mark. Everything changes when a gentle traveling weaver, John Bow, arrives in the village. The film is shot on location in Wales, and you feel that whole world. Beautiful, rough, full of folklore and judgment. McTeer's performance is extraordinary, bringing dignity and real emotional strength to Prue. Clive Owen's Gideon is a bundle of anger and ambition, and together, they elevate what could have been a simple TV drama into something memorable. Critics loved McTeer, and if you look back now, you can see this was a launching pad for two serious careers. Richard E. Grant has a blast as Sir Percy Blakeney, the original caped dandy with a secret. In public, Percy is a useless, overdressed aristocrat, the sort of guy who makes you want to roll your eyes. Secretly, he's the Scarlet Pimpernel, running a team of English daredevils in revolutionary France. He's rescuing doomed nobles right under Robespierre's nose. The series ran for 3 feature-length episodes and delivered exactly what you want. Big sets, bigger costumes, and plenty of tongue-in-cheek humor. Grant leans into both sides of Percy, sometimes camp, sometimes sharply clever, and it never feels like he's winking at the camera. Shot in France, loaded with 1790s style and full of swashbuckling adventure, this is the kind of adaptation that's just pure fun. If you want just one reason to check it out, Grant's performance is it. Andrew Davies brought Bleak House to TV with the kind of ambition Dickens would appreciate. 15 episodes told in half-hour, cliffhanger-driven bursts. Dickens' sprawling story about the never-ending Chancery case suddenly feels suspenseful, modern, and addictive. John Jarndyce tries to protect his young cousins, Ada and Richard, along with the quietly heroic Esther Summerson, as they all get caught up in the toxic, slow grind of Victorian law. Lady Dedlock, played brilliantly here by Gillian Anderson, hides secrets that obsessive lawyer Tulkinghorn, a lethal Charles Dance, is determined to dig up. Every storyline is packed with tension, and the whole cast delivers. Anna Maxwell Martin's Esther even won a BAFTA. The show cleaned up with 10 Emmy nominations and took home trophies for cinematography and makeup. Critics called it beautifully cast and totally Dickensian. For once, that's not hype. For a lot of people, this is the definitive Bleak House. Claire Foy's breakout role. Little Dorrit is the Dickens adaptation that's all about poverty, debt, and how easy it is for entire families to be ruined or redeemed by one secret. Amy Dorrit, raised in debtor's prison, spends her life looking after her fragile father. A chance encounter with Arthur, Matthew Macfadyen, pulls both of them into a web of lost inheritances, greed, and shifting fortunes. Andy Serkis is almost unrecognizable as the scheming villain. The miniseries runs for 14 episodes, and everyone is stuffed with twists, heartbreak, and the occasional cameo, like Judi Dench. The production went big, sumptuous sets, Victorian grime, everything. and it won 7 Emmys, including Best Miniseries. Dickens's story about toxic debt felt surprisingly fresh when it aired during the 2009 financial crisis. Claire Foy's Amy is the heart of the whole thing, quiet, kind, and completely unforgettable. Coming from the same team that did Little Dorrit and Bleak House, this 3-parter brought a real cinematic flair to Dickens's classic. Young Pip goes from blacksmith's apprentice to London gentleman after a secret inheritance, all while nursing a doomed obsession with Estella, Vanessa Kirby, the icy ward of Gillian Anderson's iconic Miss Havisham. Anderson takes Miss Havisham into full ghost story territory. She's a living ruin, stuck in her old wedding dress, teaching Estella to break hearts as revenge for her own. The adaptation goes big on atmosphere, dark, moody, and a little dangerous. Critics loved the look and the performances, especially how the show balances the gothic with the hopeful. Even The Guardian, usually tough on Dickens adaptations, praised the standout performances and called it totally Dickensian. Some purists groused about the ending, but most people just enjoyed a smart, stylish take on a classic. A 4-part epic that goes all in on Dickens' final, most tangled novel. It starts with a supposed body in the Thames. Everyone thinks it's John Harmon, heir to a fortune built on London's dust heaps. He's actually alive, disguised, watching the sharks circle for his money. What follows is a web of social climbing, greed, romance, blackmail, and even a little murder. The cast is huge and seriously good, and the show manages to keep all the threads moving without losing the heart. It won the BAFTA for Best Drama Serial and gets credit for being one of the most complete Dickens adaptations the BBC ever did. Not as famous as Bleak House or Little Dorrit, but ask a Dickens fan and they'll tell you this is a gem. Also, Bella Wilfer's dresses are a thing of beauty. If you're into period style, you'll get your fix here. Oliver Twist has been adapted more times than you can count, but this BBC version managed to stand out by going darker and more real. Across 5 episodes, the show digs into the dirt and cruelty of Victorian London. It's all starting in the workhouse, then going down into the underworld with Fagin, Timothy Spall, and the terrifying Bill Sikes, Tom Hardy. The show doesn't shy away from the violence and desperation, but there's humor and warmth too. Especially in Spall's performance. He's both a schemer and a strange sort of father figure. Tom Hardy makes Sikes a true menace, but with just enough humanity to make you uncomfortable. The Guardian called it dark, funny, and real. And they were right. The set design, shot with the BBC's new HD cameras, shows every bit of the grit and poverty. Victorian London here looks as grimy as it probably was. With 8 million UK viewers, this was a proper event. Christmas 1999, BBC drops this 2-part David Copperfield and basically sets the standard for all future adaptations. It's most famous now for being Daniel Radcliffe's first major screen role, but there's a lot more going on. Bob Hoskins as the always broke but always hopeful Mr. Micawber, Maggie Smith stealing scenes as Aunt Betsy, and Ian McKellen popping up as the fearsome Creakle. The story moves from happy childhood through tragedy and hardship, all the way to hope and redemption. Textbook Dickens, but told with real warmth. The production won a Peabody and a heap of praise for its tight script and emotional punch. The cast gave even minor roles real presence, and the production values, even by late 90s TV standards, were top-notch. Radcliffe makes a totally charming young David. Watching it now, you get a weird time capsule moment, seeing the future Harry Potter as Dickens' favorite child. The BBC's Jane Eyre has had plenty of versions, but this 4-part 2006 adaptation set a new high. Ruth Wilson, in her breakout role, is the heart and soul of the series. Her Jane is fierce, smart, and deeply resilient. Toby Stephens' Rochester is unpredictable and magnetic. Brooding, yes, but with flashes of dry humor that make the romance spark. The show gets the gothic mood just right, with shadowy halls and stormy moors, and a score that pushes the tension. The show racked up Emmy wins for art direction and costumes, and Wilson was nominated for a BAFTA and a Golden Globe. What made it stand out was the chemistry. Every Jane and Rochester scene feels electric, even when they're just sitting in a room together. It stuck close to the spirit of Brontë, and yet gave Jane a bit more agency, making the story feel fresh for a new audience. The Tenant of Wildfell Hall wasn't just another pretty period piece. It's Anne Bronte's 1848 novel, but what you get here is a raw, unfiltered look at what women had to put up with in the 19th century. Abusive marriages, gossip, all the stuff people pretended didn't exist. It starts in the 1820s. Helen Graham, this mysterious young widow with her little boy, shows up at Wildfell Hall. Nobody knows who she is, and small-town England does what it always does. Gossips about her non-stop. Gilbert Markham, a local farmer, is the one person who tries to get to know her, and through Helen's diary, he learns the truth. Her husband, Arthur Huntingdon, was a horrible abuser, and she had to break every rule in the book just to protect her son. The BBC's take doesn't hold back. It dives right into the ugly realities, which is exactly what made Bronte's novel so controversial. Tara Fitzgerald got a lot of praise for playing Helen with this quiet strength, and Toby Stephens, early in his career here, made Gilbert both honest and relatable. Rupert Graves as Huntingdon is pure charisma and menace, all at once. This one's in the Hall of Fame for a reason. The BBC put together a full-on prestige production, 6 episodes, big cast, and a real sense of occasion. Set in a small Midlands town in the 1830s, Middlemarch is all about people dealing with change. At the center is Dorothea Brooke, played by Juliet Aubrey, who just wants to do good in the world. She marries a much older scholar, thinking she'll help him achieve something great. It doesn't turn out that way. The series nailed everything. Andrew Davies' script kept the heart of Eliot's novel, and the production looked amazing. Juliet Aubrey's performance won her a BAFTA, and Rufus Sewell pretty much became the guy everyone wanted to cast in every costume drama after that. The cinematography and music just pulled you right in. Even now, people still bring up Middlemarch when they talk about the best British TV ever made. Jump to the early 2000s, and you get Daniel Deronda, again from George Eliot, again adapted by Andrew Davies. This one's notable for how much it tackled that was totally unusual for Victorian fiction. Identity, society, and Judaism, all at once. Daniel, played here by Hugh Dancy long before Hannibal fame, raised by an aristocrat, is not sure where he comes from. Gwendolen, Romola Garai, is beautiful but stuck in a family that's falling apart. Gwendolen marries Henley, Hugh Bonneville, who turns out to be cold and controlling. Meanwhile, Daniel gets drawn into the lives of Jewish immigrants he meets in London and gets involved in their struggle. The production didn't shy away from the novel's complexity, and it looked gorgeous. Country estates, gritty London, everything. Critics, especially in the US when it aired on Masterpiece Theatre, praised the adaptation for not glossing over the difficult stuff. Hugh Dancy's Daniel is earnest and believable, while Romola Garai manages to make Gwendolen's character arc from spoiled to sympathetic feel real. There are a lot of adaptations of Tess, but the BBC's 2008 version is one of those rare ones that doesn't blink at Hardy's story. Gemma Arterton plays Tess, a village girl whose life never catches a break. Her family pushes her to connect with their supposed noble relatives, but it turns out the d'Urberville name is just an empty label, and Tess ends up getting taken advantage of by Alec d'Urberville. Later, she meets Angel Clare, Eddie Redmayne, and for a minute, things almost turn around. But it's Hardy, so you know how that goes. What this series gets right is the mood. Lush countryside, yes, but also that heavy sense of doom and judgment. Gemma Arterton pulls off Tess's mix of innocence, resolve, and heartbreak. Critics said she was absolutely incredible, and it's hard to argue. Visually, it's beautiful, but the story never loses its edge. North and South became the sleeper hit nobody expected. It's Gaskell's 1855 novel, sort of a working-class Pride and Prejudice, with a real social edge. Margaret Hale, Daniela Denbiash, moves from her soft southern home to the smoke and noise of industrial Milton. She butts heads with John Thornton, Richard Armitage, a mill owner who seems all steel and no heart. The series leans into the clash. Old money versus new, city versus country, social unrest, all of it. This adaptation won a devoted fan base thanks to its chemistry. Margaret and Thornton's slow-burn romance, but also the way it actually deals with strikes and class conflict without turning it into a lecture. Armitage, as Thornton, basically became an instant heartthrob. Think Colin Firth, but brooding and working class. The score by Martin Phipps, the period details, even the lighting, everything's top-notch. And that finale still gets talked about as one of the all-time best romantic moments on British TV. Sometimes the period drama just gets it all right, and Wives and Daughters is that show. It's gentle, real, almost every day, but the writing and cast just land every beat. Molly Gibson is the daughter of a country doctor, living a quiet life until her father remarries, and suddenly she's got a new stepmother and a stepsister, who's as complicated as she is glamorous. Molly ends up having to navigate all these new family dynamics, local scandals, and her feelings for Roger Hamley, the scientist's son of a local squire. Andrew Davies's adaptation focused on what makes Gaskell great: subtle character work, believable relationships, and those little moments of kindness and heartbreak that make a story stick with you. Critics loved how it kept the drama low-key but real. It picked up BAFTA nominations, and to this day, people call it pitch-perfect Gaskell. It never went for big melodrama or spectacle, just honest, deeply felt storytelling, the kind of show that actually feels like real life, only with better costumes. Cranford is one of those rare shows that feels like comfort food, but with real emotional punch. Set in a tiny Cheshire town in the 1840s, the series is all about the women, mainly Miss Maddie Jenkins, Judi Dench, and her friends, trying to hold on to their world as everything starts to change. You get the full range: comic misunderstandings, romantic misadventures, genuine heartbreak, and just enough outside drama, like the arrival of the railway, to shake things up. The cast list reads like a who's who: Judi Dench, Michael Gambon, Imelda Staunton. Every episode balances humor and loss. It's half epigram, half elegy, as one critic put it. Cranford ended up winning BAFTAs, Emmys, and Hearts. It's just one of those series that people return to, especially when the nights get cold and you want something warm and a little bit nostalgic. Take a look at Victorian greed, ambition, and social climbing, and you get The Way We Live Now. The BBC's adaptation of Anthony Trollope's novel is a full-scale, sharp-edged satire, but with enough visual flair to make it addictive. It all circles around Augustus Melmotte, a mysterious, filthy rich outsider who sweeps into London with a plan to build a railway across America. Everyone, nobles, bankers, journalists, tries to get a piece of his supposed fortune. Never mind that his entire scheme might be a total scam. David Yates directed this one before his Harry Potter days, and Andrew Davies's script keeps it moving. There's a huge cast: Matthew Macfadyen, Cillian Murphy, and plenty of other familiar faces, and the production looks expensive, right down to the last candlestick. When this aired in 2001, it hit home for a lot of people because of the dot-com bubble. Critics said it was one of the best period dramas in years, and it won the BAFTA for Best Serial Drama. It's proof that the Victorians were obsessed with money and image just like we are. Parade's End takes you to the last days of Edwardian England and the fallout of World War I, but it's less about war than about the unraveling of everything old Britain stood for. Christopher, Benedict Cumberbatch, is a decent man caught in a nightmare marriage to the ice-cold Sylvia, Rebecca Hall. He's loyal almost to a fault, even as Sylvia cheats and provokes him at every turn. When war breaks out, Christopher gets shipped to the front, trying to keep some kind of honor as the world falls apart around him. Tom Stoppard adapted Ford Madox Ford's novels for this series, turning dense, stream-of-consciousness prose into sharp, layered drama. The performances are what really make it. Cumberbatch showing Christopher's stoic unraveling, Hall giving Sylvia a complexity that makes her more than just the villain. Critics loved the series for how it tackled big themes: class, gender, the end of an era, without ever losing its humanity. It's as brainy as it is emotional. If you want something that goes deep, Parade's End is about as good as it gets. If you want wit and a bit of sparkle, Love in a Cold Climate is basically a love letter to eccentric British aristocracy based on Nancy Mitford's novels. Set in the interwar years, it follows cousins Linda and Fanny through a series of wildly misjudged romances, disastrous marriages, and the kind of upper-crust parties that only exist in British fiction. Linda is the dreamer. jumping from a stuffy politician to a clueless communist before finally getting it right with a French duke. Fanny, steadier and maybe a bit more sensible, watches and narrates the madness around her. Rosamund Pike, in her first big role, anchors the whole thing with charm and just the right amount of irony. The production leans into the escapism. Gorgeous costumes, big country houses, a kind of glowing nostalgia that makes you want to jump in and stay a while. There's real warmth here, but by the end, World War II casts a shadow, reminding everyone that this world won't last.